People come to me every day and are disappointed that they get rejected by their Rolex boutique and can't purchase the watch that they dream of. Well, I've purchased over 500 Rolexes from both retail and in the grey market, so today I'm going to tell you how to buy your dream Rolex and whether you should pay the grey market premium or whether you should try and embark on a Rolex retail journey. Why are Rolexes so hard to get, so expensive, and has this always been the case? And the simple answer is no. Back in the day, you used to be able to walk into a Rolex boutique and buy pretty much anything you could see and often get a discount for it. Those days have definitely changed and you are not getting a 30% discount at Rolex, and nor can you buy just anything. Currently in the market, there are certain watches that if you buy them at Rolex and walk out the door, you could immediately make a profit, sometimes $5, $10, or even $100,000. That sets up a dynamic where the boutiques won't just sell everyone everything, and they'll become very picky with what watches they're going to sell you. So today we'll tell you exactly how to get that dream piece. And we'll also have a look at a retail journey that ended up with an off-catalog Rolex Daytona. The first step to getting your GRAIL Rolex is figuring out what that GRAIL is. Now, if it's currently in the catalog, that'll be separated into a classic or a professional model as by Rolex themselves. And if it's discontinued, you cannot buy that watch at retail anymore and you'll have to turn to the grey market. And you're also subject to grey market pricing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But moving back to the retail setting and the two broad definitions, which are classic and professional, within the classic range, we've got the traditional non-sporty Rolexes, which are the new release Land Dweller, the Day-Date, the Sky Dweller, the Lady Datejust, the Datejust, Oyster Perpetual, and the 1908 range. And then in the professional or the sport range, we've got the Daytona, we've got Submariner, Sea Dweller, Deep Sea, GMT Master 2, Yacht Master, Explorer, and the Air King. Now, all of that said about the Rolex catalog, which models are actually selling above retail and the really popular in-demand pieces? There's so many to name that you guys would get bored and stop clicking through, but the 5 that come to mind are the Panda Daytona, the GMT Pepsi, Batgirl, or Bruce Wayne, the Sky Dweller Jubilee in steel with the green or blue dial, as well as all of those really special Daytonas that no one can seem to get their hands on, such as the Eye of the Tiger or the Giraffe. Now, I've just mentioned a couple of pieces that are invite only and off catalog. Now, what that means is that you actually have to have a very good relationship with Rolex before they'll even offer you or show you those pieces. Now, I'll deal with those a little bit later, but for now, we can exclude them from the discussions because they're definitely not a first, second, or third Rolex. So there's two main places that you can buy your Rolex at retail from. The first one is a multi-brand boutique, and the other one is a standalone Rolex flagship boutique. Here in Melbourne, the multi-brand boutiques are Hourglass and Watches of Switzerland, whereas the standalone Rolex boutique is owned by Batelier Montres. Generally, I would suggest going to the standalone Rolex boutique because the spend at the standalone Rolex boutique, you can only buy Rolex. So within certain margins, you should be pretty okay as long as you want to be wearing Rolexes and you're building up to your dream Rolex piece. Whereas in a multi-watch brand boutique, you might be suggested to buy stuff like Panerai or Breitling or even Roger Dubuis to then build that spend and help out the boutique to then get your dream piece. And often some of these other brands can lose massively. We're talking about $100,000 haircuts. The other way of getting your Rolex not at retail would be to go to a grey market dealer like myself, skip the queue, and just pay whatever the market pricing is. Sometimes that'll be above retail, or it could even be below retail. So it's really important to figure out what exact piece that you want, because it might just be cheaper to come directly to grey as well as being faster. The key to understanding how to buy your dream Rolex at retail is this. The boutique gets allocated a certain number of pieces from headquarters, and they don't necessarily get a choice in exactly what they get, but they get a combination of the hype pieces, which I mentioned earlier, as well as the not so popular pieces. These pieces can sometimes sell for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 under retail in the grey market. So naturally, anyone who's done a little bit of research would not want to buy that piece and would just buy it at grey. But they do need to move all of these pieces along before they can get other stuff in. and they make the same amount of profit margins on the hype pieces as they do on the non-hype pieces. So they are incentivized to reward those clients who help them move those not so hype pieces or those pieces that they'll make a loss on. And that is how you build your relationship to then get those awesome pieces. So for the regular punter who wants a hype piece and they might only buy 1 or 2 Rolexes in their whole lifetime, it's not really worth trying to build that retail relationship, because if you want 2 hype pieces that they could sell off the shelf easily to any person who walks through, they've got no incentive to actually sell them to you, and you're just going to be going back and wasting your time and theirs as well. But if you want to buy quite a few Rolexes and you've got the bankroll to support it, well, this is how you buy your dream Rolex. Firstly, you need to go in and you have to start the relationship by getting to know the boutique and getting to know the AD and showing them that you are actually interested in a long-term relationship with them. You're willing to spend money on the way to get your dream piece, and that you're not going to resell those watches. Because if you resell the watches, you'll essentially be blacklisted. How do I know this? Well, I have also bought watches at retail. Even though I haven't sold them, I've been blacklisted because I talk about watches and I sell watches and I'm out in the public. But if you do want to sell something that you have bought at retail, you have to be very careful with the method that you go through to sell it. Each Rolex watch has a serial, which is sitting at the 6 o'clock position on the inner retort of the watch. They also have the serial on the card as well as the date. If you go to a trusted dealer like ourselves, we will blur those serials and blur those dates and sensitively dispose of those watches if you request it. That way, the boutique won't find out that you're selling these watches, and you can move along further up the list without having to outlay so much capital. But if you post these in the wrong places or you go through the wrong person, you could immediately get blacklisted, and all of that money and all of that time that you've spent building the relationship goes down the drain. So what is a realistic first piece that you can buy? Well, generally people are offered two-tone watches, as the retail price is higher and they don't really sell very well on the market, and they don't really move very well for those boutiques. Typically the boutiques have a harder time selling the ladies' pieces than the men's, and those pieces also typically come in dual metal, full metal, or with diamonds on them, which really drastically raises the retail prices and makes them a little less desirable. So a great piece as a first piece would maybe be a two-tone ladies Rolex Datejust, maybe with some diamonds, for a partner or a family member to establish that relationship. You have to be very careful not to purchase something that is so far below retail, or that is so decked out in diamonds, or an ugly combination that if you did come to sell it, that you would lose a lot of money on it. So typically for the ladies' Datejust, I would recommend buying something with the Jubilee bracelet, and also not with the domed diamond bezel, as that one's not very popular. Within those categories, there are a lot of pieces that you will get offered that are definitely a better bet. Now, in terms of yellow gold watches and the two-tone, the most popular dial configurations are the mother of pearl dial, as well as the champagne dials, so either with the stick indexes or with the diamonds. And in the rose gold, similar idea, the mother of pearl, but the chocolate instead of the champagne dial are the most popular. And then beyond that, you have to have a look at the sizing. So the 31mm size for the ladies is more popular than the 28mm, so the lady Datejust. So again, I would recommend maybe starting with a 31mm watch for that first purchase. The other thing to consider with the bezels and the dials is that the oyster bracelet is typically less desirable. And in terms of bezels, in terms of a Datejust, the smooth bezel is less desirable than the fluted white gold bezel, or the fluted yellow or rose gold bezel. So tend to try to sway towards the fluted Jubilee combination. Now, what is a realistic next piece that you could get? Well, something like a Submariner, a steel, no date or date sub is definitely possible after establishing this relationship, especially if that first piece is a bit undesirable. Beyond that, you can then have a look at buying something else that's not the most desirable, but that they maybe are struggling to move, something like a Yachtmaster, or even maybe having a look at an Explorer. A piece that they really struggle to move is a 36mm Explorer in two-tone. So if you buy that at retail and you end up losing 5 to 10k on it, they will really like you and probably reward you with a pretty good piece. To get some of the more desirable pieces like a Panda Daytona or a Pepsi on Jubilee, you would probably need to spend in excess of 150,000 without selling anything, or at least only selling 1 or 2 pieces pretty discreetly. On top of that, we have to consider that a boutique can only sell someone a certain number of pieces a year, and I'm sure that there are exceptions for this, but from what I've heard, it's between 2 to 4 pieces, and sometimes only one from the professional series or sports watches. Also, they can't tell you that they're bundling watches together. So even though they might promise that they will try to get you a Panda Daytona after you buy a full gold Datejust with diamonds or something like that, that is not necessarily the case, because there are no legal agreements saying that you are definitely going to get allocated this watch. And there have been a lot of issues in the past where people have bought all kinds of things in the hopes of getting a watch and simply not got it. So be very, very careful with what you're buying, because you could end up building a relationship with them over a couple of pieces and then not end up getting that dream watch. The other thing worth considering is that each boutique operates independently, so there's no harm in putting your name down with every boutique in your local area to increase the chances of you getting offered something. That being said, if you just put down a Panda Daytona and you go back and don't say anything else and you're on this waiting list for 5 years, as they tell you, 99.9% of the chance is saying that you're not going to get a call. And realistically, after everything that we've explained, I'm not surprised. Now, all of that was really complicated, so let's step through it with an example of a video from the internet of what pieces someone had to buy to end up with an off-catalog Daytona.
This is an incredible Rolex retail journey that led to an off-catalog Rolex Daytona Giraffe. Collector is the owner of multiple pharmacies, medical centers, dental operations.
So the first thing to note is that the person who's bought all of this has an extensive business profile. If you do have something about you that, you know, the boutique wants to promote, or they're like, you know, you're either a celebrity, an influencer, you own a big company, you do a lot of good things, and, you know, it's good for them to try to reward that kind of behavior, definitely explain that to them and, you know, tell them who you are and get to know them personally.
So he started his journey with his AD back in 2019. He got his first Datejust back then, as well as a Datejust for his wife.
So it's not an instant, you know, instantly I'm going to get my dream watch, but they've laid the groundwork before Rolex was even that popular. 2019 till now, we're talking 6 years of this journey. At the time as well, he bought 2 Datejusts. These at the time probably would have been selling in the market for under retail. So, you know, he's made that first step of buying a piece that Rolex maybe was struggling to sell.
Over the course of the years, he bought his wife a green dial Day-Date.
So while this is a better dial, the Aventurine dial, this watch is very, very expensive. And would probably be selling in the market peri-retail, if not maybe slightly under after a couple of years. So definitely a great watch, and he's done well to pick up this watch as the next watch in the collection. But currently, it looks like he has spent probably around $160,000 over the course of a couple of years.
And he got himself a chocolate dial Day-Date.
It looks like the ombre dial to me, but again, that's more money. So now his spend is getting up closer to $250,000.
And he got Datejust for his mother and father-in-law.
So again, this is building up the spend further, probably above 300,000 Australian now. And I would suspect that those pieces might have been two-tones and there might have been some diamonds involved as well.
He donated quite a bit to underserved schools and families within his area.
As mentioned before, the Rolex boutique and the management would probably want to reward that kind of behavior.
Obviously, you know, based on his purchase history, it's not necessarily enough to, you know, justify a Giraffe, but he told me that this Giraffe was initially meant for a much bigger VIP client, but for whatever reason, the watch ended up circulating to him. Obviously, his strong relationship with the AD and his business played a role in why he got allocated this watch. In terms of the Rolex Ghost, he actually got this at a secondhand store in Hawaii. Actually, he said all he wanted was a meteorite dial Daytona, and they ended up giving him this. He said that he's still shocked to have the Giraffe.
Now, do I necessarily believe that he only spent around 300,000 and then got this Giraffe? Not necessarily, but if we have a look earlier in the video, we can maybe explain how he did end up with this piece. So we can see that there's 2 other Rolexes in this box. One is a Starbucks, or the steel Rolex Baron Date with the green bezel, which does sell above retail, but only for a modest amount above, as well as a 2-tone rose gold Yachtmaster, which is well below retail. So just based on what we can see in that box, it seems that he spent even more, maybe getting closer to the $500,000 mark before he's offered this piece. And it seems that he's kept every single watch that he's bought. Now, do I think that if you or I went out and spent $500,000 over the course of 5 years that we'd get a Rolex Giraffe off catalog? Probably not. But would we be getting those Panda Daytonas, maybe a John Mayer Daytona, maybe a Tiffany Dial Yellow Gold Oysterflex Daytona? I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. Now let's circle back to some of the more popular Rolexes that most people are trying to get at retail and see how much the market price premium is on them and whether it's better to build a relationship through Rolex or to just buy them grey. A Rolex GMT Master 2 Pepsi has a retail price of around $20,000, and for fresh brand new they're selling for close to $40,000, but you can get used versions in the market for in the low $30s. Now, to get this from the boutique, I would estimate that you would have to spend about $150,000 on some of that stuff that goes below retail and some that is peri-retail before you get something like this. I suspect you would lose a lot more building that relationship than you would on the $20K uplift that you would have on actually getting this piece. On top of that, that whole journey would likely take you 2 to 3 years if you were playing the game correctly. In that time, the retail prices also go up and there is the risk that the watch that you want gets discontinued. Then we can have a look at a Panda Daytona, which is the most desirable Rolex. So that has a retail price of about $27,000 and sells brand new in the market for about double that. So you've got an uplift about $25,000 to $30,000. I suspect for something like that, you'd need to have a minimum spend of about $250,000, again on pieces that go below retail and close to retail even. You also have to hold on to those for a set period of time. I personally would just jump to the grey market. But if you have a few million to play with and you're happy to play this game and you've got the time, well, you can then probably buy that GMT or that Daytona and continue to play the game until you end up with some off-catalog pieces. So in summary, to get your dream watch from the Rolex AD, you need to help them out by buying below retail watches to eventually build a spend to get that dream piece. You have to have a lot of capital to be able to support this journey and not sell pieces or sell them discreetly along the way. And you need to have that patience and that persistence to keep going back, discussing with them and building that relationship. On the other hand, if you think that all of this is dumb and you've got the money and you want to buy a piece, well, then the grey market is perfect for you and you should come pick up your dream Rolex.